rush 4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run inside the 10. Head first. He dives off the 5-yard line.
65 yards per hour trap. It might pop wide open, Rats. Get this there! Yes, sir, Rats. Nice going, baby. Yes, sir, Rats.
High snap. It's no good. The Chargers will win. Here comes the rush. He sidesteps. Can he throw? He can't. The ball flipped forward is loose. A wild scramble. 2 seconds on the clock. Just grabbing the ball. It is on a fumble. Casper has recovered in the end zone. The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most seedy.
Hello and happy Wednesday and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. To my left, there we go, is Coach from the Locked On Defense podcast. Coach, how are you doing today?
Doing good, sir. We'll get that pointing right one of these days. Like, you know,
I'm just going to do this from now on and pull kind of like the Alice in Wonderland, and one of them will be correct, right?
There you go.
And then we have Alex here.
That's right. No.
With regards to from the Arrowhead Addict group. How are things going?
Things are going good, Rich. I got to say, though, you know, as far as the point, that's why I like being on the bottom, because I usually just got to do that.
There you go.
Right, you know, so.
The life, the simple life, I suppose, right?
Oh, yeah. I like
the simple life. So we have a real great show for you guys. As far as I know, guys, Captain is going to be here. The real challenge is just there's random traffic on the way home that everyone is familiar with, and he'll be with us shortly as far as we're aware. So don't worry, your favorite salty pirate will be here shortly. Repping
Steve the Pirate will be here.
Yeah, your favorite pirate, right?
There's a guy on our team named Steve the Pirate.
Scurvy.
So we have some really interesting stuff to talk about. Coach, I feel that there's been Alex, probably with you, there's been the most Chiefs news, I think, by a thin margin between you and the Chargers this week. Maybe we'll kick off with you and kind of start with the preseason, and then you've definitely had your share of combination of injuries and some other team news and stuff like that, just with regards to, ebbs and flows. So let's start with your second preseason game. How did it go?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, maybe this is what you're getting at with some of the news, but I want to say, rest in peace to Lynn Dawson, who passed away.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Chiefs legend, guys like the epitome of Chiefs football, next to Mahomes, really. And it just, sucks that it's part of life, but what I saw, he at least went out peacefully and was with his family. So you can't ask for much more at that point of life. Now on to better things. Week 2 of the preseason, we had the Chiefs play the Commanders or football team or whatever they're going by, whatever they decide to identify as in a week. And I saw them winning 24-14. Pretty solid showing across the board. Washington's not that good of a football team, so I kind of anticipated it to be a pretty good showing across the board, just because their ones aren't really that good, regardless. But you saw a lot of the younger guys that you really took another step forward in terms of how they read the field and reacted and fit into the scheme. So you could really tell that, a lot of these younger guys have really picked up the pace and everything seems to be gelling the right time and in the right direction for, things to be successful come week 1. Obviously the main thing I focus on is the starters and where the rookies that we anticipate to be starters are how they're looking. Really can't have any complaints about the first team offense. I think they've played a grand total of 3 quarters mixed in of like Buechele or Haney or some other pieces. But when the first team's out there in the 3 drives they've had, you see pretty much perfect passing and a touchdown. And I mean, Mahomes on the preseason is 18 for 26 with 3 touchdowns, and that's in the only 3 drives he's played. So things are looking pretty good from the worries of how the offense would look losing Tyreek Hill. Granted, it is the preseason, but you got to kind of take that for a good sign of things to come when things get more creative and the playbook open up, more into the regular season. As far as defense, kind of the same story with the first teamers. You've seen the first team unit when it's out there, not give up any points in every drive that the projected starters are out there. You see that drive ending in a punt. Our Furious George, as people are calling him now, no longer the Greek Freak. I tried to get that to go, but someone else in Milwaukee, I guess, has a claim on that one. But George Karlaftis is just, every week kind of he's kind of who I had in mind, talking about the younger guys taking the next step, and you can just tell that he's really working on the edge pressure and setting the edge, and he just plays with a high motor, and everything's kind of coming around for him. As you can see, he had a sack of Wentz in the second quarter, which that goes to show you how good Washington is. They were playing Carson Wentz into halftime.
Sir, he needs.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of the opinion that the less exposure you give Wentz to the field, then the less likely he is to mess something up. But that's a different topic. But he had a great sack on Wentz. That was like very much a high motor play. He was out of the play for the most part, and just kept going and ended up getting a sack. And like I said, there's just a lot of good things meshing at the right time. For the start of the season, and be interesting to see how many of the starters play here in week 3. But things are looking pretty good at this point.
Oh, hey, Captain. Now I'm concerned.
Yeah, what is this?
The screen that I'm seeing now is indicative of a phone.
You on TikTok?
The last time we had you on a phone.
Oh Lord.
Oh
Lord.
A red button was pressed.
Yikes.
And I know we're putting that on the rear view.
Right at it.
I mean,
look at him. He has the power, and he knows it.
Don't do it. Just don't do it.
I'm gonna try not to. I'm not gonna try to hit that. In fact, what I'm waiting on is my computer here to open the frick up, so I can actually go to a real studio.
Okay.
Okay. So if I can get and it's slow as whatever. And okay, no, that's not what I want. And I'm not pushing any buttons. Okay, so
it's like Gruden Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Button.
No, I'm trying to push the. I don't need this.
Let's see if rubber on it happening here.
I don't know.
Okay, I'm getting. Hey, don't piss me off. Okay.
Whoa,
do not
man.
piss me off. I'm trying to do. Okay, I'm entering studio.
So, Alex, I have a suggestion for you. I think the Euro Yanimal might be a good one.
The Euro Yanimal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's at least creative enough. It certainly won't be taken by anyone else, so at least that's one option.
That's true. Very suggestive.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to.
Wait, hold on. Let's do it.
Close the entire web browser on your phone.
Now, how about we remove it and bring him back that way? So we got to worry about him doing it.
Yeah.
There we go. We got. I already took care of it. Don't worry about it.
You kicked me out? Okay, good.
Yeah. There we go.
Fire off your phone.
Just
turn it off.
power off the phone.
down.
I'm turning off the phone.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Put it
so
in the
phone
glass
is off.
case out of the
Yeah.
Okay, I can't hear you though. Hang on. You there?
Yeah, we're
No.
here.
Okay. Well,
So-
I can hear you. That's fine. Hi.
Hi.
Again, apology. I don't know if you got the message, but like I said, thunderstorms kicked the entire power out of my house about 6:20. So it's taken about 25 minutes just to get everything turned back on.
All right now.
So let's spin things back up before we get too far down in the KC game, because Alex, I had a couple questions for you just about that game and whatnot. Wanted to thank all of you for joining us live tonight. We got quite the crowd. We got a lively chat going. Just wanted to thank a lot of the same crowd that comes in here. We got the Whiz Kid today. So for those of you who know, Landon Clark is Broncos wizard, or you may know him as Mundungus Creevy. That is his son, his eldest, who is here. And so, Landon, thank you for joining us. We have Tito, we have Lafayette, Sinister Rain 89, 6'10" Mexican. Captain, you likely remember him from Broncos Talk. We have Carlos, Gerald, DZ, and Edward. Edward, I recognize you from Captain Jack's show. Thank you very much for joining us. Matt Marovich, thank you very much for joining us. And we also had Robert Perna. And see if there's anyone else that I remember from the chat. Buddha, thank you. That's awesome. So we got a great crowd today. And for those of you who are on Twitter, I'm just going to go ahead and put a quick banner up. If you are watching us on Twitter, thank you. We appreciate it. But if you want your comments to be pulled up, or you want us to be able to see them at all, Twitter has actually taken the ability for us to pull those into the chat. And so if you can come over to YouTube or Facebook on either of our channels, we greatly appreciate it. And then go ahead and fire your questions and comments in there so we can go ahead and get you involved in the show. So anyways, now that we've gotten all of those niceties and the PSAs out of the way in terms of all the social media stuff. One other thing, ladies and gentlemen that are joining the show, the Wild Wild West is now on Twitter. We have our own branded Twitter handle. If you can go ahead and follow us there on the Twitter, we will go ahead and follow you back, and you will be brought up to speed on everything to do with this podcast via that Twitter handle. So, Alex, I thought it was really interesting how you guys are continuously playing your starters just in general. So my questions and comments aren't really about this last game per se. It's more just how the philosophy is clearly different than at least the Broncos this year and several other teams, including, say, like the Rams and some others. I mean, you're playing Patrick Mahomes for a handful of series, or at least one series so far in each of the games. What are your thoughts on that? And out of Kansas City, have any of the starters pushed back on that approach?
Yeah, so it was actually interesting you asked that, because before the show, I was asking Coach, I was like, are the Chargers just not going to play Herbert, or what's going on? Because, it's like the polar opposite of how KC's doing it. I think it's more it more has to do with the sort of turnover or change of scheme to some degree. Especially I understand why Mahomes is out there, because there's kind of a big change in the passing game with a lot of new faces. So it kind of makes sense to sort of work out the kinks in a dress up type setting, rehearsal thing before the regular season. So I kind of understand why they're doing it. And kind of the same with the defense. They lost a lot of people. I mean, secondary alone, they lost almost every starter outside of Snead. Sort of the same with the linebacking core. So it kind of makes sense that they are, playing the guys that are projected or anticipated to be heavy contributors a little further into preseason games than, say, the Chargers or some other teams that, have, I guess, more stability. You say like the Broncos aren't playing their starters as much, or it doesn't seem that way.
Or at all.
And I kind of find that, a little bit odd, just kind of with the sort of the same approach. I mean, you got a whole new QB and new system and a new coach. I would think that they would want to, get some live rehearsal settings in a preseason game with those guys and see how some stuff meshes up before you get into when they actually matter. Game with those guys and see. And then, as far as the pushback, I haven't seen really anything out there in terms of people overly complaining about, at least players about complaining about being out there for so long or longer than they think they should be. And I think that's just kind of the indicative of the locker room and those guys that like Andy Reid. I'm sure there's some dudes that don't want to be out there, but they're that is true. I mean, the injuries are definitely a concern. And I talked about it last week. I did the first throw or second throw Mahomes took. He took a pretty big hit, and it could have been bad. And he even commented about it after the game. But I think the Chiefs are doing it, like I said, because they had such a large turnover. Passing in the passing attack and just sort of in the defense as a whole. It makes sense to me that they would do that and have them go a little longer than normal, just to see how that meshes up.
Now, do you think that might also be? This isn't actually meant as a knock, even though it might come off as one. But do you think that's also a difference between the age of the coaches that we're talking about? I mean, and again, I know that could be seen as me trying to, a kind of a cheap shot, if you will, at Andy Reid's age. That's not really the point at all. When you look at, say, Hackett, and you look at Chargers coach there, whatever his name is.
Yeah, that guy.
That dude, McDaniels.
And then like McDaniels has, he's been a hedge coach before. He's still not old, right? He's actually, younger than a lot of people think. So, you're looking at the age of the coaches that, aside from Andy Reid, and there's an age gap, at least enough to notice. So do you think that might be part of it as well?
I'd call it less experience.
Sure. Okay.
But I think that definitely plays a factor. He obviously comes from an older coaching tree and a different mindset and philosophy about the game of football. And even Coach said it before we started the show. He's like, that's just how Staley is. He's a McVay guy. They just want the QBs to chill. And so I think to some degree that is a little bit of it, just sort of the different philosophies of, where these guys sort of learn from and what they bring to their team. And that's kind of been the way you've seen the game progress as time's gone on in terms of contact and safety and practice. So it would make sense that the younger guys would be more of a hands-off approach as it comes to preseason, and let that be more of the third teamers and special teams and practice squad guys, prove their worth other than proven commodity, go out there and something bad happens.
No, I think that's interesting, and I only asked that question because actually, and for those of you who didn't see the tweet that we sent out yesterday yesterday evening, actually, on the 5280 podcast on MHRT Network, we had Derek Wolfe on from the Super Bowl 50 Denver Broncos defense. Stayed with us for almost the entire hour. Came in a little later after the intro, but stayed with us right to the very end. We got some amazing stories from him, some other interesting, tidbits of information. And from his perspective, he said as a player, he would have loved it, because if you already know that you're the starter and the coaches already know that you're the starter, you're not sitting there having to pick up stuff. You're pretty much already good to go. From a player's perspective, all you're wanting to do is kind of rest your body to get ready for a grueling season. And from the coach's perspective, they should really be focusing and likely are focusing on, especially the way the CBA is done up now, on who the depth is going to be and what they look like against opposing competition. And we're seeing that more and more now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
We're seeing that play out like before us in preseason.
Yeah. And to answer Avatar's question, I've talked to some people about it in terms of week 3 of the preseason and what starters are so specific. Mahomes, if they'll be out there, not a lot of. I went back and looked at last year, and not a lot of them played in week 3. Mahomes specifically didn't play. Kelsey, Hill, all the guys didn't play. But I think they play here tomorrow. So I think looking at where their last preseason game in relation to when week 1 is for them, I am expecting to see at least one series of the full starting unit, just given how this preseason's gone. Because really, if they don't play, then you're looking at 2 weeks out from when they play the Cardinals in week 1. That's a lot of time, but at the same time, it's like you said, the starters obviously know they're good, they're ready to go. So maybe 3 drives and 2 preseason games is enough. But I think just given how it's gone to this point, I expect to see at least one series with the starters and Mahomes.
Interesting. So that's fast. I want to jump over to you, Coach, just because of the situation that's going on there with the Chargers in terms of some of the news that came out today with the surgery for JC, and then also just overall some of the injuries you guys had both from the game and just kind of over the course of the week and how you guys did, tying that into the preseason game.
Well, first and foremost, our game, it was horrible. Let's just keep it real up. Let's just be honest with you. That's we had a stinker. I mean, just to be honest. I mean,
everyone did.
Especially from a special team perspective, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. So I think it's 50% because the Broncos, they had a rough one. We had a rough one, but the Raiders and the Chiefs, I thought they did pretty well. I mean,
the Raiders won by a point.
That's still a win.
Crap.
Way better than we did. So yeah, I get them later. Just get them later.
I will in a minute. Your ass is grass, and I'm the lawnmower.
How you got out of the cage,
man? I said it without swearing either.
No, you didn't, but that's okay.
I called him a piece of crap. And I said bull crap.
He says swears so much you only realize he swears. That's just funny.
I said bull crap. I said bull crap, and the lawnmower piece of crap. Where was
We'll
have to go look at the
transcript. That's the clip for this week. That's the short for this week.
Yeah. That's like Dan Campbell. I don't care if you got one ass cheek. Who goes?
Right.
Why am I always the clip? Because I'm always entertaining.
Well, dare I say, for this week, Captain, you are the butt of the joke.
Right.
You're very marketable.
Pun intended. So back to my rant.
Now we're going to talk butt of the jokes. I'm going to say
no.
It just compounds. It just
can't help himself, ladies and gentlemen. We're sorry. FCC, please don't ban us.
Oh, man.
Let me ask you a question.
I was waiting for the Ace Ventura. Because it was apropos given the moment.
Of course.
So Coach, with regards to the Chargers game there, obviously not the best outing for the team, but just overall, generally speaking, what did you take away? Because I mean, even in a loss, there's at least some, dare I say, positives that come from it that you're going to see here and there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm glad you said it. Kind of cued me up for what I was going to say, is that, there were some positive and negative aspects of the game. I mean, clearly the negative was tackling, special teams coverage, which has been a bane of our existence for the past several years, is that we've always had woes and lows in that area. We might do fine for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden some big explosion happens, or blown coverages, block punts, giving up punt returns for big yardage, giving up kick returns for big yardage. In this case, we gave up one of each in this game to the same guy. So I would say for sure.
I'd say arguably Chargers are in mid-season form then, right?
Yeah, here you go. Here you go. Nonetheless,
Sorry, did you say end of season form? Because I would agree.
Well, mid to end season form.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't even say that.
I didn't say anything. I'm just disregarding those two clowns on the other side of the stream. So anyhow, like I said, it's it was the negatives were the tackling, the negatives were the pass coverage. In a sense, it was with a kick coverage. Let me say it that way. Kick coverage was a negative, but for 2 straight weeks in a row, I think the positive the takeaway is that how Chris Rump played yet again as a secondary edge rusher for us. He's playing really well. Like I said, he gained some muscle and some stoutness to his body in the offseason, put on about 10 to 15 pounds of muscle, and he's looking pretty good from an edge setter to a rusher. He's probably been the best person from a pass rush perspective we've had in his 2 preseason games. He's looking really good. So great problem to have as a reserve guy that, to give Mack and Bosa and those guys a blow. Morgan Fox, who came over from the Panthers, that this is familiar with Brandon Staley's system as well, came over in the free agency deal late in camp. He looked good from interior pass rush perspective, so that's a good problem to have. So those 2 guys have definitely been a silver lining in the disaster that the game was. But overall, I mean, also from the offensive perspective, I did like yet again 2 weeks in a row what Michael Bandy did. He's a slot receiver that we picked up in free agency. And I guess you could say, well, we just picked him up, as a free agent, this particular camp. So I like to see him make the roster over Joe Reed. So he's had 2 stellar weeks in a row in regards to his pass catching ability. So yeah, I mean, so for those particular aspects of it, I liked it. The interior O-line looked pretty solid. The tackles, Storm Norton and those guys, he look a little shaky in certain spots, but again, they won't be the day one starters. So it's not something to, cry with spilled milk in a sense. So overall, like I said, I think that we came out of the game, in its entirety without any big time injuries to reserves. But to answer your question about JC, his injury was actually non-contact related in a sense because it's some type of defect he had from birth. He has a condition where when he flexes his foot, it based on what a tweet I saw from the doctor, actually, ironically, the doctor tweeted out what the issue was, is that he, for some reason, when he flexes his foot, extra piece of bone shoots into the middle of his foot. So he had to get that cleaned up. So I guess he aggravated it during camp and it flared up. So they were trying to figure out what to do with it. And ultimately it landed on him having surgery. So he'll be out. And according to what Brandon Staley said, as soon as the wound heals, he'll be back out there. So it's really a cosmetic thing, a cleanup thing. So it's not a situation where he needs rehab and things of that nature. He just needs healing time. So it could be 2 to 4 week time frame for him to be out. So, we can breathe a sigh of relief, Chargers fans, because Chargers Twitter was freaking out when they realized that JC
that almost smells like a bone spur or something along those lines.
Yeah, but they didn't call it that though. They said it's a defect he has.
No, I said it sounds like it. Like it, when you I've broken my leg twice in the same spot, and so where the ball of my joint is, I basically all been told that when I get probably 10 years older than what I am at now, I'll have to go for what you hear for all these football guys saying cleanup surgery. Right. What effectively they're doing is they scrape away kind of the callus that builds around the outer part of where you broke whatever you broke. And then you smooth that back out so that you don't, you're basically not in pain anymore. Gotcha. And it's from what I saw, from what you're saying there, that sounds an awful lot like something very similar to that, where he has an extra piece of kind of bone that either grows off of one of the bones in his foot or some variation of it. And he's got to kind of get that ground down or cleaned up. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it's basically a 2 or 3 week healing process if that's what it is.
Right.
Wouldn't that be something that would be like noted or addressed on a physical, beforehand when they do all these trades and signings?
For sure.
For sure.
So
it's definitely, I feel like something every team's known about, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
Well, I mean, he's only been with the Patriots and the Chargers, so I would like to believe this that maybe they knew about it. But I guess it's one of those things where you wanted to take care of it so it wouldn't affect him down in the long run. Because I guess he kind of aggravated it in camp somehow, and it was becoming uncomfortable. So he decided to get it cleaned up. So again, like I said, Chargers Twitter was freaking out because he didn't practice Monday, and they were trying to figure out why. They realized it was injury related, and he got surgery. They was like, "Oh my God, this the overreaction was just crazy." But we can breathe a sigh of relief that he'll be back. Outside chance week 1. I think week 2 is a good I guess you can say jumping off point for where he might actually come back and play.
Yeah, what if that extra bone was the source of all of his talent, though?
That's funny, and that's my guy
I
Kevin.
was like, what if he can't pivot the same anymore? Or, cover the same way?
And it's funny because Kevin is actually a Patriots fan. Ironically, him saying that. So he's a Patriots fan, because he just lost J.C. Jackson in the offseason. So
he's just trolling you.
He's pretty much. That's my guy, though.
He asked a very viable question, though. The medical uncertainty that is this operation.
Cut it out. Cut it out. Cut the malarkey.
All right.
He'll be fine. He'll be ready, locking down your number 1 receivers once he gets back on the field. Don't worry.
No, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I'm glad that he's not hurt for a long period of time or anything like that. Because at the end, what you really want from this division is you want everyone to come out as healthy as possible. The last thing you want is any one of our teams to have a glaring injury that happens really, really early or even before the season, because then there's kind of a built-in excuse. Right. What you really want to see is you want to see everyone go in to the season, go through either all or most of the season without major injuries, and then see who comes out on top.
True. And that's a great point, Rich. And I think that, again, what Chargers fans should be happy about, or I guess you can say take solace in, is that the history in the last 5 to 7 years, especially when the teams had good potential going into camp, we've come out with disastrous results when it comes to injuries. It's always been a big name or 2 or 3 in certain cases have gone down in the preseason. They were literally either lost for the season or they were majority of it. So with us having no glaring injuries or no long-term injuries going into the last preseason game, which we'll likely see no starters, I think that's a good problem to have. I mean, I think we're in good position to be ready come week 1. So I think I like the idea and the philosophy Staley's adopted from the McVay system, is saying that, guys that are established and guys that are know the system and don't have to get any reps to get comfortable, there's no point in playing them. There's no point in playing them, and it's paying off, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, the Rams, I mean, if the proof is really in their win percentage and how far they've been able to get in every season, really, since McVay's gotten there. So I think the proof has kind of already been shown to the league that, if you approach things the right way, you can end up with some pretty impressive stats at the end of it all.
Yeah.
So for all the Broncos fans, I'm going to intentionally go last. You may or may not like my take from the Broncos game. And that's fine, but I can justify it, and I will explain why I have the comments that I have. So, Captain, I got to throw to you for the Raiders game for preseason game 2. Your thoughts, obviously, based on the outcome, the Raiders did quite well. Curious as to some of your takeaways and comments on the game.
Well, first off, Alex, kiss my ass.
We're past that.
Yeah, I'm getting that out right now.
That holds a grudge, clearly.
All right.
Because unlike other people, I actually watched my game. I didn't watch anybody else's, but I was in Miami and watched the game. Okay. And what you might not know, Alex, since you're ignorant because you're from Missouri.
You didn't give them the whole word.
I'm not woke. I'm asleep.
Yeah, well, ignorant and you are woke or whatever. Anyway, point is that the officials screwed up a touchdown play, and they know they screwed up, but they couldn't do anything about it. It was at the end of the first half on what was a hellacious hit by one of the guys that I think is going to make the roster. I got his name over here somewhere. The Dolphin caught the ball, made 2 steps, and the proverbial football move, and got lit the F up. Ball came out, and the guy who popped him also went over him and grabbed the ball and was running for a touchdown. Would have been a touchdown, and the officials blew the play dead. They said it was an incomplete pass. And I'm there, and I'm screaming at them. I'm like, incomplete my ass. That is a fumble. And, of course, when they show it on the big screen and when the officials powwow, they said, oh, yeah, it was a fumble, and the Raiders take over at the spot where they had the ball. But unfortunately, they don't get the points because the officials blew the play dead. And the officials, again, screwed the Raiders out of 6 points. Yeah, I'm not going to say 7 because you can't assume the extra point. So you're FU on they only won by 2, by the way. It was 15.
Yeah, I said I misspoke. It was 2 points. My bad.
Yeah, but no, it was really a touchdown win. So cram it up your arse sideways. Okay.
Sideways, though. Jesus.
That's aggressive.
Graphic.
Second point. The Raiders' second team was playing against the Miami first team minus Hill didn't play.
That's like the same. That matches up pretty.
Yeah. Fuck you. Hill didn't play, but Gesicki played and a bunch of their other receivers played, and they whooped the Miami first teamers. The Raiders second teamers whooped the Miami's first teamers. The Raiders pretty much second team offense because again none of their real stalwart players. And their offensive line has not been – the only time they played their starting offensive line was this week in the scrimmages against the Patriots, okay? And they from all accounts, they were whooping up on the Patriots in the two days of scrimmages. That was the first time that you will see the Raiders starting offensive line the entire preseason. That was this week in scrimmages. But anyway, the Raiders' second-team defense up against the Miami first-team defense held Tua basically to nothing. Hit their first drive, they got nothing. The second drive, they got a field goal. Then sewer water, which is what my buddy calls Bridgewater. He calls him sewer water. Sewer water came in here, and they got 3 points from sewer water. And it was their third team with some kid that looked really fantastic in the preseason. It took them up until the midway point of the fourth quarter to score a touchdown. So when you look at it that way, I was very happy with, the Raiders went and scored on their first offensive series, went right down the field with 7. They got a defensive safety against Bridgewater, so that was 2. They got a field goal and then another field goal. So they actually were quite they won statistically for the most part, and then then the other stats were thrown out with the other third teamers, but they had a touchdown taken off the board. So again, for somebody who actually watched the game, Mr. Alex, the Raiders handily won. Handily won. Yeah, I saw that too, you bastard. So there you go. So
wow, covering the gamut today, aren't we? So, I think it was again. I actually thought that the Raiders have kind of showed some interesting things during preseason. A mix of pretty good, and there's a few things obviously where you're saying, ooh,
and I'm not going to say that we're walking away with everything. I'm not. The offensive line is still an issue.
Yep.
But Leatherwood, it will be lucky to be a backup this year. And there was actually talk of what the Raiders' options are with him. Are they going to give up on him immediately? He is definitely not a tackle. We've seen that. He's horrible at tackle. The actions are they going to put him in and make him a guard the full time? I think that's probably their best option. Or if he comes in on a jumbo package, that's fine as well. But there's talk of trading him, cutting him. We don't even know, and that's unfortunate because the kid has a lot of potential, and just has not shown it. Not shown it.
Yeah. No, so I mean, this is preseason. This is where you're meant to test things and try different variations, like the offensive line, where you want to start mixing in guys where you can see who they look good beside, styles of play, et cetera, right?
Yeah. And actually like I said, up until the 2 practices with the Patriots, the Raiders have played a mix and match along the offensive line with everybody playing. I don't say everybody, but Parham played left guard and center and right guard. And actually for the Patriots, he is the starting left guard as of right now, which is good. And I knew that he was going to be pushing Simpson, and he was the starting left guard. Illuminor, who I said for a couple weeks now would be the right tackle, he is the right tackle. And Mumford, the rookie out of Ohio State, would be pushing for time, except that he's been injured. So him and Parker have been injured. And if we ever go through the final 53, I'll actually kind of I actually did my final 53 as well for that. But it's going to be a crapshoot on what I think. But I think I got it pretty close. But like I said, the Raiders have not been juggernauts by any stretch. They've gotten capital. They traded Nick Mullen to the Vikings and got a pick out of him. They traded, like I said, Gillespie, the safety, to the Vikings, and got a conditional pick out of him. So we're getting even more capital with players that we don't even have playing for us anymore. So that's the way it is. And I don't know about what you guys are doing, but that's a positive thing, because it was always the Raiders would, and we still might do this, scour the boards when if Sonny releases a right tackle of good repute in the final cuts, that might be the guy we pick up. But I think that other than that occurring, we're going to go with what we got. And with the one final mention of the fact is the Raiders cut Drake, which is a waste of $8 million, 4 and 4 this year and next year. And that's unfortunate. But again, this regime is showing they don't care where you were drafted. They don't care what your cap hits are. You're either going to play or you're not. And if you're not going to be a player for them, you're going to go. I like that.
All right.
Nice. So I'm going to get into the Broncos game, and let's just say it was less than pretty. So I was disappointed with a few things. Is that I've kind of felt that the Broncos haven't done some of the things that I would have liked to have seen in preseason, specifically with regards to the offensive line. First off, we haven't played any of the projected starters, which is, I suppose, okay. But we've taken our draft pick, who is projected to kind of be almost like what we did with, if you guys remember, Matt Paradis on the Broncos, where we kind of built him up over two seasons, and then he became the starter on a go-forward basis, kind of all the way through, and then eventually he left. But we had him play at center for almost all the preseason now, where he's just getting rep after rep after rep. And for me, I would have much preferred to have seen Graham Glasgow step in at center for portions of games to see what he looks like from a blocking perspective at the offensive center position, specifically to see if he can do a better job at setting the center part of the field when it comes to run blocking. The Denver Broncos offensive line, the entirety of preseason, that's first and second game. So that's not just us against the Bills. That was us in the first and second preseason game, have done an awful job at run blocking with the second and third string offensive linemen. And that's a huge concern for me. If any one of our starters were to go down, then those second and third stringers, whichever one ends up making, whichever one of them makes the roster, would have to step in. So those are the guys that you're going to need to rely on to then make those plays. And what we've seen thus far from preseason is that as a collective unit, at least, they have been unable to appropriately run block to open any form of holes. And I think that that's a real issue, because the Denver Broncos, one of our bread and butter elements of our game last year, I mean, the passing game wasn't great, but our run game was great. It was phenomenal. Like, it was within the upper tier of the NFL. I mean, we almost had two of our running backs go for 1,000 yards apiece, and that's pretty darn impressive, right? So it's almost like one of those things where you're, bug-eyed a little bit when you see what we're seeing now on the field, and it's super concerning for me. And in some of the previous chats there that we've had, I recognize this is just a preseason game. I truly get it. I really do. But these are the depth pieces that each of our teams are going to see in games. And I think as fans and as fanalists, as we're kind of doing this type of stuff, we all need to kind of open our eyes a little bit and be a little bit more critical and perhaps a little bit more objective of what we're seeing on the field, because we're one injury away from seeing any of those Broncos that we saw on the field on against the Bills from having to start. So is that was that good enough for you as a fan and for me at a number of positions? The short answer is no, and the longer answer is absolutely not. So it's just bad across the board at certain spots. Some of my notes that I came away from the game was also on the defensive side of the ball, which was equally as concerning, because over the course of the offseason and into the practices and preseasons, we keep on hearing from the Denver Broncos about how good the depth is on the defensive line. And when you saw what the Buffalo Bills, and I tell you what, I will give credit where credit's due, and let's put aside the first series or two where the first team offensive linemen were on the field for Buffalo. Let's just kind of put that aside, and let's go 2s versus 2s. Absolutely just got blown out of the water. In fact, you had to wait for the announcers to tell you that the Buffalo Bills changed their offensive line in order to notice, unless you were paying attention. But the results were the exact same. You saw the defensive linemen get spun around. You saw them get pushed out of the way. You saw a lot of the defensive linemen getting boxed out, which is basically where you saw the Buffalo Bills be able to kind of get in behind the D tackle or the nose tackle and then push them over to one side to open up that gap between the guard and the center. And you saw runs right up the gut from the Buffalo Bills where they were running not just into the linebacker, but they were getting past the linebacker before they were being touched. And you cannot have that at the NFL because you'll get absolutely slaughtered in the regular season. I mean,
I'm looking at the stats. It's like the lowest run average was Zach Moss with 4.8 per carry.
Yeah.
It's not good.
So, like the stats are basically proving out what I'm saying, right? Like it was just, it was, I don't want to say cringeworthy, but certainly like it was like a horror movie on TV, right? Like watching that kind of stuff play out. The other thing that there was a great comment that came in about from a viewer on Facebook. I wanted to thank you for asking the question. Am I concerned about the inside linebacker depth? And the answer is 100%. When you look at who's played for us, in this preseason, the only non-starter, or the only starter rather, who did not play is Josie Jewell. We saw every other inside linebacker who was slated to start for us at the inside linebacker position play. And to be kind, they did not look good. We saw, and the reason why I'm saying that is pretty simple. As an inside backer, you want them to be there when the runner gets to them, not chasing the runner down to stop them. And we actually saw the latter rather than the former. And if you remember guys like Danny Trevathan and Brandon Marshall from our Super Bowl 50 team, and I mean, name your other inside backers for the Broncos that have been top notch and or should be in the Hall of Fame. You're used to seeing guys that are right there when the running back tries to blast through the line of scrimmage, or even at the line of scrimmage with the defensive lineman blocking those kind of seams that can sometimes form between the linemen and stopping the running back dead right at the line of scrimmage. We were not getting that. And then on top of that, we were also getting high tackles. So I was looking to see if Coach was going to, perk up when I said something like that. But, when you see safeties and linebackers trying to tackle a guy at the shoulders or at the pad level, as opposed to at the waist, I mean, that is, dare I say, 101.
Yep. All day.
Right. That's football 101, right? Like this is
recipe for disaster and injury.
Yeah. Like you're done. Like, and Alex, your stat of the worst guy had 4.8. That's your reason.
Yeah.
Right?
It goes,
right there.
yeah.
I mean, and coach, you can probably, just say a thumbs up on that all day, right? If you're going to try and tackle any runner or even wide receiver who's catching the ball and try to tackle them at the shoulder pads, you've got a guaranteed 2-3 extra yards just on them kind of stumbling forward. Yeah,
pretty much. I mean, you have what you call a strike zone.
Right.
And that's from I guess you can say the sternum area to the knee. That's your strike zone. If you don't hit anywhere above or below that, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long day. And again, you see more injuries happen that way when you tackle it properly or don't aim for the strike zone. And again, you have to aim for the strike zone and keep your head out of it, in that new tackling system that they've been implementing in the last few years. So outside of that, if you don't do that, you're looking to bust a collarbone, rip a bicep. I mean, there's a multitude of things that can happen improperly there that will cause you a lot of headaches. So,
yeah. And so we saw a lot of that from both the safeties and the linebackers that were on the field, whether it be late tackles or high tackles. And that's just a recipe for not stopping the run properly. And then add on to that, or, just as a secondary piece where you get boxed out, you ended up not stopping the run. And I've always been a huge proponent of pressure right up the middle of the field. And I kept on seeing it consistently where the nose tackle or D tackle that was there was getting pushed way back. So you end up with the tackle getting pushed way, way back. And then the defensive ends, while they were getting through to the quarterback, there was such a large gap for running back to get through because of the D tackle getting pushed 5 or 6 yards back off the line of scrimmage, that the running lanes were always there. And what makes it even worse when that happens with the D tackle or nose tackle is the running back can go either left or right, depending on where the larger gap is for them to run through. And so now there's two options for that back to take, as opposed to just one where you kind of control, you call that like a gap assignment or gap control on the defense. And we just didn't have it. And that's just a huge, huge, huge concern for me. Now, as much as I would love to go on about some of the concerns I saw on the field, I really do want to give credit where credit's due. Aside from Trey Quinn, we saw some phenomenal wide receiver play. Like absolutely phenomenal wide receiver play. And in my opinion, we could see probably a better version of Trinity Benson from our team last year come out and not make the Denver Broncos roster or get traded from the Denver Broncos for a late round draft pick, because I could see another team saying, I would rather trade a late round draft pick for a wide receiver that I've seen play well from you than have them go to another team, because that wide receiver will likely be better than anyone they're going to be able to draft that late in the draft, from next year's draft. So I could totally see like a 6th or a 7th coming our way for even a guy that we're likely going to cut, just because another team would rather guarantee that they get that guy rather than, having him go to some other team that they would prefer they not go to. So I could see that kind of stuff play out. And we'll get into that with the 53-man roster projection. But overall, I had some major concerns with regards to the offensive line and run blocking. Our pass protection was actually quite good. I was actually pretty impressed with that. But our run game was non-existent as a result of the poor blocking, and our run stopping was more concerning, actually, from my perspective. As Alex, you pointed out, with regards to the worst guy at 4.8 yards per carry, which is, that's almost demoralizing for an NFL team. In terms of
I
injury,
am shocked, though.
oh, sorry.
Where is our weekly Saubert check? Because I know he did some stuff. And I thought that would have been the first thing he said.
I intentionally left him off my list, but now that you bring him up at the very bottom of my notes, I have in red bolded text, Saubert touchdown, baby.
Yeah. Oh man, here we go.
And that's going to make its way into my Twitter feed. So, you'll have to just bear with as I tout my Saubert fandom. He really is the perfect tight end for a system like this. And you saw what he could bring to the table when he's used properly.
Yeah.
You really did. You actually saw what he can do when he's used the right way. And I think with a guy like Russell Wilson, who is better at seeing the field, I think that you'll see Saubert, dare I say, have the potential for a breakout season this year. And I would love to see him be able to come back on a 2 or 3 year deal after this year. That's, I don't want to say team friendly, but certainly something like that's not like a break the bank thing, but something that sees him making what he's worth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
making what he's worth. All right.
I just had to ask about it.
Well, he still has to prove that he can do it year over year. So it would be a team friendly deal if he breaks out and goes crazy, but certainly he'd be making more in that 3 year span than he's made in the entirety of his career in the NFL thus far. So that's a huge windfall for someone like that, right? So I'd love to see him get paid and kind of solidify his place here with the Denver Broncos, because he's exactly the type of tight end we need.
Nice.
Again, like I've said multiple occasions, he reminds me of Joel Dreesen. If you remember him from when he was here at the Denver Broncos with Peyton Manning.
Mm-hmm.
He's that perfect hybrid blocking, pass catching, kind of do it all tight end. So moving on to injuries, we kind of covered some of them. Chiefs had some injuries. Chargers, you guys had some injuries. I haven't seen that many come out of the Raiders, Captain.
As far as injuries, and this one hurt in the fact that we just signed Jenkins at defensive end. He was there a week and had a non-contact injury, and he's gone for the year.
Damn.
And we saw him on the field for like what amounted to like about 5 minutes, and I was really high on the guy, saying, "Hey, this is our number 3 defensive end," because I think Coons is going to be number 4. And like I said, I don't know if it's an ACL, MCL, or whatever, but he's already gone for the year. He's on the IR, which is unfortunate. I mean, Waller is still nursing his hamstring. He was in for one practice, and they're being very, very careful with him. He wasn't in any of the practices with the Patriots this week. As far as other really debilitating injuries, I say Mumford and Parker are the 2 tackles. Parker, who is like the swinging doors at right tackle, who again, and you know what pisses me off is I have a feeling that he will be on the final 53 for a day, and then they're going to IR him so they can possibly get him back at the end of the year. And I see that happening, but the same thing possibly with Munford if he doesn't come back, because I see him coming back as well. But those are the only ones that I really think are the ones that are major for the Raiders. Waller, Parker, who, no love lost there. Mumford, I was really sorry to see, because again, I thought he would be a really good find. And then, of course, like I said, Jenkins, who was there for a week and is gone. So the Raiders are still looking for either another defensive end to come in, or Bauer, who's played really well this preseason. I think is going to be that guy to come in and be that extra defensive end for him.
I'm seeing a bunch of guys in the chat trying to find me on other platforms. I'm on Twitter on this handle right here, which you can follow me there. And on YouTube, I'm not on my own channel. I do not have my own channel. I am directly affiliated with the MHRT network. So if you're looking to see more of the stuff that I've done previously with them, you can find that on MHRT network on YouTube, and we can go from there. But I do not have my own channel directly, but just go ahead and check us out on the MHRT network. You'll find more content there. So that's unfortunate. So you had, a couple injuries, although I don't think nearly as many as the Chiefs or the Chargers, though. Alex, do you want to go ahead and take that away and go from there?
I suppose. As you just
actually, sorry,
graciously
you want to limp into the Chargers or Chiefs?
Let me get into this segment. As you alluded to, the Chiefs have had quite the news bulletin, so to speak, of injuries or guys that are questionable for Week 1, and a lot of big contributors. Juju and Chris Jones have kind of been limited to practice for the greater part of a week now, and both are listed as questionable for Week 1. So they're not going to be in any sort of involved in this game tomorrow, and it's kind of up in the air if they're even going to be there for Week 1. And Chris Jones is a guy that you can definitely tell when he's not in the lineup, and you can definitely tell that it severely impacts both the flow of the game on the defensive side of the ball and just the defense as a whole. He's probably the second best D tackle in the NFL, the guy in LA named Aaron Donald. So that would be probably the biggest the biggest thing to impact the season, and definitely something I'm keeping my eye on. But from what I've seen and kind of from how last year went, I imagine he'll be there for Week 1. And then Dunlap, Carlos Dunlap, and Butker, the kicker, kind of flashed up here the last 2 days as being questionable for Week 1 with kind of Achilles and ankle issues going on. So, at least if Butker's out, then we know we got Justin Reed, the safety, who's 100% kicking in the preseason right now. So we'll just
what is one for one?
Well, yeah, it's still 100%, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just guessing. He one kick and it went through. So there you go.
Yeah,
they're happy with low bars, Captain.
Yeah, but Dunlap was a guy they just recently signed to sort of have a veteran presence on the edge, and he hasn't really gotten to get up to speed or get into a lot of stuff with the defensive unit. So I imagine he's out for probably Week 1, and we'll be seeing if he's even in Week 2 with just how the timing of his signing went with sort of the injuries he's been dealing with. And then in the bigger news, I guess, obviously the biggest news, Chris Jones not playing, but Blake Bell, second, third string tight end, he had some hip surgery or hip procedure done, and is doubtful for Week 1 and maybe even a little bit further into that. But he's always been kind of a low-key contributor for the Chiefs. He left for a year and came back, but they always find some way to get him in and use him a lot in 2 tight end sets. He was actually an old QB at Oklahoma, if you guys remember him. I think he was right after Sam Bradford. Just somehow ended up being a tight end in the league for almost 10 years now. But then in the other injuries or guys designated in a more serious way, you had Niang, who has kind of been the alleged right tackle of the future for 3 years now. And a guy I've talked about to some degree about the right tackle battle, which is the only spot on the Chiefs line that's not solidified really at this point. And they put him on the unable to perform list, so he's out until at least Week 5. So that's just sort of a further step back for a guy who's kind of just had nothing but setbacks in sort of trying to carve out a niche on the starting line. And then Derek Gore, another guy I talked about last week, and as Mike just talked about, he fractured his thumb in the week 2 game against the Commanders, and they put him on the IR, so he's pretty much done for the year. But I think that the Chiefs are going to do kind of what they did with they've done with some players in the past. Gore was kind of a fan favorite from last year. They brought him up from the practice squad after Edwards-Helaire went down, and he had a couple electrifying moments. But I know I talked about him last week about being sort of a disappointment in terms of kind of what he was doing with the ball in week 1 of the preseason, and that he might be on his way out. So I think the Chiefs what they're going to do is kind of reach it's like an injury settlement. They reach with a guy, and then they're able to sign him. Because now they can't designate him for a return to start the year. So he's off the roster, but they can do this injury settlement route, and then they're able to sign him to a futures practice squad contract. And I imagine that's what they're going to do with him, just because that's kind of what they did with him last year. And I think that's a guy they don't want to not have in the locker room or around the team, but he's definitely sort of in a very crowded room on his way out, and they're not going to prioritize keeping him on the roster or bringing him back. So I think that's the way that plays out for him. But that's kind of the overview of the infirmary, if you will, that is the section of the Chiefs locker room that includes these guys. So it's
you added an extension is what you're saying.
Yeah.
You remodeled the meeting rooms to become the extension of the infirmary. You just didn't need them anymore.
Yeah, there it is.
You just don't have enough players left. But I did see some interesting comments. And Jason, I'm going to pull yours up because that's pretty much the mantra that I grew up with when I was playing rugby, which was the doctors aren't going to do much unless you've actually shattered your thumb or it's completely separated and cracked all the way through.
I got 2. These are both from football. That's as straight as they go.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, most of the time, growing up, at least for me, it was, there's a reason why my fingers fit like this perfectly is because I was told to tape them and play.
You're not a Vulcan.
No, well, I am maybe, but we were just told to tape them up and play because the doctors wouldn't even do anything. You'd go and you get an x-ray and they say, yes, it's broken. And then you say, okay, peace out. Thanks. And you just go home and you tape your fingers together. You just wait for it to heal. So, I mean, unless his break is so bad that he needs surgery, why even take the time off?
Yeah, honestly, I wholeheartedly agree with it. It's like, I think if it was someone like Edwards-Helaire or, someone that's for sure expected to be a contributor throughout the year and a first, second teamer, I think that you see them handle this in a different way, or like not put them on some sort of injury designation and hold the roster spot until they come back. I think because of a guy of Gore's stature who was kind of on his way out and not really carving out a name for himself, so to speak, to stay on the active roster, I think it was probably a internal discussion of, hey, we want to keep you. You're obviously out for a little bit. Why don't we put you on the IR? We'll reach this settlement and sign you to the practice squad. I'm sure that conversation happened before the designation was made, and I would be willing to bet if it was someone named something other than Derek Gore, you would have seen them handle it in a different way.
Yeah, no, I get it. Captain, what about you in terms of injuries and whatnot? We covered you. Sorry, Coach. What about you guys on the Chargers? Your list is getting longer now too.
Yeah. So it's some tentative holdouts, and a couple of guys hit IR actually. But overall, Isaiah Spittle went down with an ankle. He's questionable for week 1, but it's not a high ankle sprain; it's a normal. So they're just being cautious with him in regards to getting that ankle healthy. Donald Parham has been out for a while. He's had some leg issues. But I think that's more precautionary as well because he was coming off of a gruesome injury and a severe concussion last year. So I think they're just being really careful with him. We did lose Damian Lloyd to IR, and they actually released him through injury designation this couple of days ago. He was a long shot to make the roster anyway from a middle linebacker perspective. So I think that he was, it was just unfortunate that he did get hurt. But he was a long shot to make the roster, so it was just an injury destination release for him. And of course, J.C. Jackson. And to Jack, to answer your question, I think he has an outside chance of playing week 1. It just depends on how quickly his wound heals. Because Brandon Staley said in a press conference today that he said that the moment his wound heals, he's going to be able to go suit up and be back on the field. They just have to wait for the wound to heal from the surgery. So once that happens, then yeah. So it just depends on how long that takes. He said about 2 to 4 weeks. He had the surgery 3 weeks, legit 3 weeks out from the game, the start of the Raiders game. So, I mean, he has an outside shot, but I would definitely believe that if he does not play week 1, week 2 would be the one he comes back for.
It sounds an awful lot like when I had the pins out of my leg. So when you have, I don't want to call that minor surgery, but it's basically minor surgery. So the worst thing about a surgery like that is typically not the healing. It's the healing of the actual incision that was made in order to complete the surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And from what you're telling me and from what I've read, it's basically one of those types of things.
Yeah,
is the cut has to heal, and as long as he's not bleeding through his sock, he can get on the field.
There you go. There you go. So it was a maintenance thing, I think. And it's just a cleanup, as we eloquently put it. Fix some type of issue he had from birth. I don't know, call it a birth defect. It doesn't sound right, but it was something that it was the improper way his foot was. Based upon him, I guess from birth until how he grew into his foot as an adult, it didn't land right.
This sounds like a very gross over.
So he just had to go clean up something right. Again, what's that?
I said this sounds like a very unnecessary over explanation of his injury, though. So maybe he was doing something sketchy off the field.
Oh God, just cut it out. Cut it out.
Breaking news.
Anyway, he'll be listening. You hope he's shady and not ready for week 2. Raiders and Chiefs fans are we're hoping that they'll see J.C. Jackson on the field that week. So, but I think he'll be back in short order. I'm not worried.
We'll just attack the rogue bone now that we know about it.
Yeah, you do that. You do that.
So, the Broncos ones are pretty straightforward. So we had Ojemudia go down. I'm gonna be honest. He's had a really bad preseason so far. So he was not looking great to actually make the roster. In my opinion, Ojemudia was always better suited as a safety for the Broncos. However, we keep on drafting good safeties both in UDFA and in the later rounds of the draft. So it's almost like we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not moving him there and then drafting guys that are just as good or better than him as well. So I do wonder if Ojemudia is going to even be able to make the roster or make the team. So that'll be a really interesting one. But in terms of injuries, we have a lot of people coming back. So Avatar, you asked a great question earlier with regards to an update on Sam Martin. Go ahead and pull that comment up here. The news is right now that Sam Martin is in fact slated to be available for the Vikings game. Now, my prediction is that Sam Martin actually gets cut come 53-man roster decision time. But there is, as I've been told and heard, Sam Martin is Brandon McManus's best friend. And McManus is a staple and a lock for the Denver Broncos roster. He is pretty much automatic when it comes to certain field goal distances. And you do not want to upset someone like that on the roster. So it's quite possible that they bite that bullet and keep Sam Martin just as a result of the friend. We'll call it the friend factor. But I do think that I think it's Waitman. I have to just double check the spelling there in the middle of the gentleman's last name. He's looked very good through preseason, certainly looked serviceable and at least as good as Sam Martin. So I think that if there is a roster cut, we could see Martin get cut, but he is in fact looking like he's going to be ready for the Vikings. We also saw the return of Billy Turner, who's our projected starter at right tackle for the Denver Broncos. What?
I think I called that when you signed Billy Turner, and you told me I was crazy.
No, I didn't think he was going to make it as the starting right tackle. The one thing I didn't cover off in my notes from the first 2 preseason games, as I summarized here, was from my perspective, the Calvin Anderson experiment is over.
Yeah,
it's done. We're good. We can move on. I think that he is. I'm not going to lie though. He's a legit left tackle from what I've seen when he stepped in for Garrett Bowles. And I think the Denver Broncos would be well suited to have him start at the left tackle position to see if we can't trade him to another team who's in dire straits for left tackle, because you get real value from left tackle spots. And he has not looked great at the right tackle position, in my opinion, although I would have loved to have seen him worked out there because I really do like him. But Billy Turner has come back, and we've also seen KJ Hamler return for light practices the last 2 days. Speedster, 3rd year in the league now, has an injury history. So I'm not sitting here, shouting from the rafters and rooftops saying yay, because we need to see if he can actually survive a full season. But when he did come back last season and he had what it appeared to have mostly recovered from his injuries, he looked like one of the best wide receivers on the team. He was absolutely outstanding. And so if he can stay healthy for the entirety of the season, he's that speed guy that, a lot of you other AFC West teams have been accustomed to having on your roster, particularly the Raiders and the Chiefs. And he'd be a guy to look out for, someone that you're going to want to take note of, because he looked excellent last year when he was healthy. Known for his speed, but started to polish his route running. So almost like a trajectory like we kind of saw with Hill a little bit, where we saw him polish his route running over time.
Yeah,
and I think
the same type of guy, running or receiver.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that if he can continue to show that progression and learning, adjusting to the NFL, more importantly, stay healthy, which would be wonderful for him. I think he can really do some damage at the NFL. He has to stay on the field. He can't help his team if he's not playing. So, and so really the major injury that we saw from this past week was Ojemudia. And then we also saw Turner, a young rookie, get put on IR with a wonky, weird toe thing. Some of the details were still shady. I don't know how bad it was, but it sounded really bad because he immediately got put on IR like the very next day. And so it sounds like he may have to actually go for surgery, I would imagine, because that's the only way I could see a lineman with the toe injury ending up on IR so quickly. And even Hackett in his post-game interview said his toe was messed up. and so, I mean, using the technical terminology there, it had to be pretty bad. He was also taken off the field in a cart, which again, I think speaks volumes.
Not good.
I think that's an accurate description of what took place.
Yeah, just put some tape on it and get back out there, right?
And then the other guy we got some positive news on from the Broncos was Jonas Griffith with the elbow issue. Some news came out today where he is rapidly preparing to come back on the field much quicker than they had originally thought. He was originally looking like he was going to be a week 2, week 3 guy, and he's looking on track for being back week 1, which is excellent because he was, in fact, our projected starter at the inside linebacker position. He is our sideline guy with some speed and some good tackling ability, really came on later last year. He was the guy that was alongside Baron Browning at the inside linebacker spot last year for the Denver Broncos. I was very much looking forward to seeing him play and show out in preseason, and he went down in the second play of game 1. So you saw nothing from him in preseason. So it was pretty disappointing from my perspective. That's it for injuries, really, from the Denver Broncos. We've been largely healthy, but we've also, sat all of our starters. And so we all have guys that are vying for roster spots that are basically playing. And, we're kind of seeing that quality of play, generally speaking, on the field overall. That's why some of the run stopping and everything has been, severely lacking. I'm going to throw over and we're going to try and cover the 53-man roster. We can try and get through this pretty quickly for everyone if we can. We do want your feedback, though. So please drop the questions and comments you have on the 53-man roster projections. Captain, you said you did your homework.
And I don't have to turn the screen around to prove it like I did the
No,
one.
no. I believe you. We've had proof before. We're good.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw over to you and let's cover the Raiders to see what you have as your projected 53-man roster.
Yes, sir. Well, it's 25, 25, and 3. The specialists are Carlson at kicker, Cole at punter, and Sieg is your long snapper.
Yep.
I got 25 for the offense. I got 2 quarterbacks, Carr and Stidham, especially with Mullen being shipped off. Garbers, I think, is going to make the practice squad. For the offensive line, and this was for the practice that they had with the Pats, Miller left tackle, Parham left guard, James at center, Cotton is your right tackle, Luminor is your Cotton is your right guard, Luminor is your right tackle. Parker is going to make the 53, and then it's going to get put onto the IR. So there's one of these guys.
Chicken.
Sorry, what?
I said your O-line sounds like barbecue chicken.
I don't get it.
It's okay. It's okay. We can move on.
Okay. Simpson and Leatherwood, unless I hear otherwise, are 2 guards that will be on the squad. Mumford, I think, is going to make it, and Barton is going to make it as well. I think Olasine and Grassu, who is the backup, or I should say the third center, will probably be on the practice squad, but that can change as well. I got 6 wides: Adams, Renfro, Hollins, Cole, Johnson, and Turner. With a to-be-determined wide receiver going to the practice squad. Waller, Moreau, and Hollister are your tight ends with Bauer to the practice squad. Running backs: Jacobs, Bolden, Zamir White, Abdullah, who definitely outplayed Drake, and Johnson is your fullback. Britton Brown and Walter one of them might, if they carry an extra running back, one of those guys might make the 53, but I think they'll both be on the practice squad. As for the defense, your ends are going to be Jones, Crosby, Kuntz, and Bauer, the kid I was talking about that will take the place of the injured Jenkins. I think Tagovailoa, the kid out of Notre Dame, will be a practice squad guy. Van Valkenburg will be a practice squad guy. They're high on him. Defensive tackles, here's going to be a surprise. Hankins, Nichols, Billings, Pecco, Farrell, the rookie, and Butler, the rookie, are going to be your defensive tackles. Vickers, practice.
Hold on.
I know what your next question is, and Cleve Farrell gets cut.
Oh.
No, that's not my next question.
Okay.
Captain, when I was on your show, when you first signed Kyle Pecco, there was a good portion of your fans for your show who laughed at me when I said that Kyle Pecco will be making your roster because he is that good.
And he's played that good this year.
Well, that's fascinating because there was a whole whack of the folks that are on your channel that told me I was crazy.
Well, there were people that had never heard of him, and he has shown out in the games and the practices that he's played.
I agree. I agree. Pecco, in my opinion, when he was with the Broncos, showed flashes and was never given the opportunity to continue to grow and develop. But you saw him make the plays you want to see from a guy at his position. And I always thought that if someone were to finally give him a proper shot at being a guy, even if he was a rotational guy in at that spot, that he would show out. And I'm not surprised that he is slated to make your 53 because I've always felt
in my estimation, and I've been wrong a couple times.
Sure.
I've been wrong a couple times.
Once or twice.
Or 3. At most 3. Anyway, apologies, but yeah, no, he's played well. I think that he will be on the 53. Vickers, I think it's going to go to the practice squad. And if Vickers doesn't, then, it could be that they keep Cleve Farrell and then see if somebody has an injury. And then because that is a heavy contract, but they got rid of Drake and there was talk that they were going to swap out Cleve Farrell for Wynn, the offensive lineman for the Pats, is basically contract for contract. It's like an even swap, but I don't see that happening either. So, again, I think that Cleve Farrell is probably going to be cut because he's been injured. He hasn't played, and I don't want him on the team.
And he's dog water.
Yeah,
Water.
you actually have to improve to be dog water. but that's for me. For linebackers, I got Perryman, Diablo, Jayon Brown, who had 2 interceptions the other day against the Patriots, played real well. And I think that either the rookie Butler or the rookie Masterson is going to make the team. The other one will go to the practice squad. The kid that we signed the other day, Tay Davis at linebacker, I don't know enough about him. He might be that guy that they keep because they did sign him, and there's been good things said about him. But again, I haven't seen anything, so that's an iffy thing. We'll see if he plays Friday. So he might be practice squad material. He might make the 53, and then both Butler and Masterson might go to the practice squad. As for corner, okay. I think that obviously Rock Yassin, Anthony Averett, Hobbs has been fantastic. He's definitely there. Phillips is the kid that they got from the Bengals is going to be a nickelback / kick returner because of his that he can play those different positions. They're going to keep him around for that, in my estimation. Mullen, I'm not sure about. I think he might be one of those. Put him on to 53 for the first day, and then pop him out for the IR. He's been oft injured. He hasn't played a lot. That if they're playing that game, he might be on the original 53 and then goes to the IR. That's a possibility. But him and like I said, Parker are those candidates right there. I think Cosby makes the practice squad, and I think Amick Robertson gets cut, and the kid has all the ability in the world, but he's just too short. Finally, at safety, Abram has played well in the preseason, which is amazing. He's playing within his bounds. He's not making stupid penalties. He'll be there. Merrick, Harmon, Teamer, and Farley will be your last of the squad. Cole and Polamalu go to the practice squad. Yes, Sam Webb. Yes, Lafayette. I miss Sam Webb. Sam Webb as your other corner for that was the guy that made that stick and would have been the fumble recovery that the officials didn't get to us. So there's your 53.
Very interesting. So you had I would argue that Farrell, I realize that he hasn't played well, but given the fact that he was drafted not long ago, that he was picked high, now that would be a very that would be a very Patriots move to kind of make, right? Where you're not panning out, just go away, right? Like that's a very Patriot style thing to do. Certainly something you wouldn't do a lot when he was with the Raiders. I
was going to say it was Al Davis scholarships. If you were a high draft pick, you would stay on that team over people that actually showed worth because he drafted you. And especially if it was an Al pick, which was like a first, or actually definitely anybody in the first round, even if you sucked, that's where Al made his picks. The rest of the guys were 2 through whatever. And if you were an Al pick or an Al protege, or you were the Al speedster, if you ran the fastest 40 in the combine, you were likely going to be a Raider, and that was just way it was. But there are no more Al scholarships being given out, and I like the fact that this organization is going to that realm.
All right.
Yeah, I'm all for the Al picks. So I'm with Hefe.
Well, if we're going to talk about picks that you guys have had that have flamed out, let's go back to your old GM.
Carl or Pioli? Peterson or Pioli?
Peterson and Pioli, both of them.
Well, but look at us now.
Last time I checked, you weren't the Super
You went
Bowl
to the AFC Championship game 4 years in a row.
lost.
AFC West won a Super Bowl.
And
That
lost.
sounds pretty good.
And lost. Lost in the AFC Championship game. We're watching the Super
Well,
Bowl on TV.
Have the Raiders lost an AFC Championship game in my life?
Not recently, but see, I live in the now. I live in the now, mofo. I live in the now, okay? The AFC West, the champions of the AFC West as of now is Kansas City Chiefs. And until somebody beats them, they are the AFC West champs. But you know what? That's in the now. And it all starts again in about 3 weeks.
That's a very John Gruden statement you just made.
No, it's not, because I'm not racist, sexist, or homophobic.
Hey. I agree with you there, Cap. You definitely not
well, yeah.
in that regard.
Well, I know, Yeah.
Your mic's off, Rich.
Yep. Yeah. Well, yeah, he's muted.
Yeah, try it again. Or turn your volume up. You were talking and nothing was coming through.
What happened there? No, still nothing.
Muted.
No, you're still muted.
The mic isn't connected. Try it again.
Try now.
What about now?
There we
Yes.
go.
Yeah.
All right. It looks like there's I'm having some technical difficulties. It's starting to thunderstorm here, so I wonder if we're starting to get some brownouts and stuff. I have a generator, so I'm wondering if that kicked in too. But I live in Canada, guys. That's kind of the crap I just have to deal with. So we got the Raiders 53-man. I think that's really fascinating in terms of some of the moves you made, in terms of who made it, who didn't. I think there's some, things that I'm sure some of the Raiders fans are saying, oh, no. That's one of the fun parts about doing these sorts of things, is that you kind of get to make some executive decisions, see how they pan out. So I'm going to throw over to Alex so we can get some of the Chiefs information in here. And then Coach, we'll go over to you, and then I'll kind of close out the show and give my my Broncos 53-man to kind of close things out.
Boom. All right. Well, I'll try to be quick. I don't have very many surprise cuts, are like big names that any Chiefs fan or NFL fan would be shocked that I'd say they're not making it. Sort of similar layout to Cap, 25 and 3. There's been a lot of talks of if the Chiefs are going to keep 3 QBs or 2, but Andy Reid always keeps 2. So I think you see Henne and obviously, Mahomes and Henne. Bell's been given plenty of chances to kind of usurp Henne as the second guy, but I don't see that happening. So I try to get it. Huh?
The hen dog.
The hen dog, dude. He's holding it down. He's kind of like Chase Daniel. Probably made $40 million to throw the ball.
Exactly. That's why I started laughing. I said the head dog, just like Chase Daniels.
Can't be upset at that. But then I see the Chiefs. So I guess the biggest surprise. I see the Chiefs keeping 4 running backs. One of them being Burton, the fullback, because they kind of use him in some other types of formations where he's not your traditional fullback. But I see the other 3 being Edwards-Helaire, Jerick McKinnon, and Isaiah Pacheco, the rookie who's kind of come up in the preseason. I think you see Ronald Jones get let go just because he hasn't done much to to show he deserves to be on the roster, and he's not good in the passing game. So, that's kind of the crux of Andy Reid's running backs. And so I don't envision them, finding any reasons to keep him there. And Derek Gore's obviously gone, and there's and then the other guy I've mentioned, Jerrion Ely. They've kind of been using him as both a receiver and a running back. He was a running back in college at Ole Miss, but I don't see him making the roster either. I do think that the Chiefs keep 4 tight ends, kind of keeping the spot open for Blake Bell if he's available at the start of the season or not, but he's going to be on the team. Then you have obviously Kelsey, Noah Gray, and then Jody Fortson, who's really been sort of coming on in the preseason, and he was a wide receiver in college that they've kind of molded into a receiving specialist out of the tight end position. Got both touchdowns last week from Mahomes. So a lot of hype and a lot of excitement with him being in the tight end position and what they can do with him. And then as far as receivers, I see him keeping 6. Hardman, Juju, Scantling, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, who's kind of another guy he picked up from Tampa Bay and has really been coming on strong in the preseason. He was kind of the security valve for every QB in the first week, and then he caught a 40-yard bomb from Mahomes to set up a scoring play here in the second week. So I see him with the more and more involvement he's getting with the ones, kind of indicative that he's going to be on the roster. And then Darius Fountain will be on the team. So I see kind of the big shocker release in terms of wide receivers. I don't see Josh Gordon staying on the team. He just hasn't done anything. And while it'd be cool and like a feel-good story to keep him on the roster, he played over 50% of the snaps last week and had 1 catch for 10 yards, and just hasn't been able to do really any of the old Josh Gordon stuff we know him for. So I don't see them finding a way to keep him on the active roster.
Well, who's going to get your weed?
Wow.
Probably the dispensary down the road. It's legal here, so they don't even test for that in the NFL anymore. But then in terms of offensive line, I see him keeping 9. Not really any big surprises on that. Brown, Tooney, Humphrey, Smith, Wiley, Jerrion Christian, who they signed from the Texans, Allegretti, Reeder, and Kennard, kind of familiar faces outside of Darian Kennard, who I think could be pushing for the starting right tackle spot here. Maybe not the start of week 1, but I think very early into the season. The defensive tackle, that's probably the other biggest spot where I saw a surprise cut, if you will. I see him keeping 5. Chris Jones, Derek Nandi, Thrishon Wharton, Colleen Sanders, and Danny Shelton, who they obviously picked up 2 weeks ago to kind of beef up the middle of the field, quite literally. But the odd man out with that is Taylor Stallworth, who's a guy that they picked up from Indianapolis last year and wanted him to sort of be the Danny Shelton. We're signing this guy to beef up our D-line and solidify the middle. But he really hasn't proven to be that type of guy. I think if he played a little better, then you see Khalil Sanders get released because he was sort of a FCS player that they, project guy that's always been able to do enough to stay around but not really take the next step. So I can see them releasing Stallworth are trying to trade him to get to that point. Same with D-line. I see him keeping, the traditional 5, Frank Clark, Furious George, or what'd you call him? The
Furious George.
Furious George Karlaftis, Carlos Dunlap, Mike Dana, and Malik Hearing. Those are the 5 that'll stay. No real surprise cuts in terms of
the Euro Yanimal.
There it is, the Euro Yanimal. Goes together like lamb and tuna fish, right?
Lamb and tuna fish.
Then I see him in terms of linebackers keeping 5. Bolton, Willie Gay, Leo Chenal, Darius Harrison, Elijah Lee. The odd man being out there is Jermaine Carter, who they picked up. He was a significant starter for Carolina last year, and he was expected, between him and Lee to fight to kind of be that number 2 Mike guy. But Jermaine Carter just has not been the same dude he was. He is a thick-looking man now. He definitely put some poundage on from making the move from the East Coast to the Midwest, and he just hasn't really shown to be worth anything. He kind of reminds me of Anthony Hitchens, which is, a dude they got rid of.
I am not you teed me up for it, and I'm not even going to go there.
Well, fair enough. But that's also a dude that I see them potentially trading or trying to if they don't end up just outright cutting him. See him keeping 6 corners. Obviously Snead and McDuffie, Fenton, Josiah Williams has really been stepping up in the preseason. He was a late round pick and kind of the slew of late rounders they took in terms of the secondary, but big turnover and how many people they lost. So, but there's going to be some odd guys out. He's Johnson, who's another guy they drafted. I don't see him making the team. Boodle is not making the team, although I want him to because it's just cool to say Boodle. But he's kind of been on the decline in terms of his usage. He was a big special teams guy, and he just, I don't think he's going to stay around. See him keeping 4 safeties: Thornhill, Justin Reed, Brian Cook, and Deion Bush. There's really nobody else on the roster worth staying. And then obviously the 3 specialists in Bucker, Townsend, and Winchester, the longest tenured chief, and the long snapper. So that should round out my projected 53. No real big surprises. Just a couple guys you saw them pick up in free agency that you would have thought would have stayed, but haven't really proven to be, what their resume was to lead to the signing.
Interesting. So, Coach, as we committed and promised to, you're going to go ahead and go right into the Chargers 53 right after this. Do we have any comments on the KC kind of rounding out of the 53-man roster? Any surprises, anything along those lines?
Stupid, but interesting.
Well, I do think I do agree. I think
I'm going back to Artie Johnson, man. I know that's where you were going.
What's stupid?
It's never mind. Go look at Laugh-In circa 1969 Artie Johnson as the German. Okay, that's it.
So this is kind of where I was looking at for this comment here. I think that KC has got a few key positions that they haven't plugged this offseason. I also think that they've almost pulled what I call kind of what the Patriots have done, where they have some guys on the roster that are really good, but then they haven't backfilled through the draft and bolstered the talent behind the positions well enough to truly fix that position and have the young guys step up to fill the voids. So when I look at,
I don't know if I agree with that, but that's fair.
I think that when you have a veteran like Tyrann Mathieu leaving your team, you need to have another veteran in the back end of your defense that can fill that void. I'm not sure that you guys have actually filled that spot in terms of your defense in the back end. I also think that you need to have, and look, I'm looking at this from experience. So when I look at what the Denver Broncos did with their Super Bowl 50 defense, they gutted it too quickly. It was inevitable that you had to move on from guys. I get it, because you can't pay everyone that played that well for, you can't have an all-time defense like that, pay everyone and still be able to field the team. You can't do it. So,
yeah.
So the point being is that you need to do it slowly And you need to ensure that you continue to properly backfill the depth on the roster in order to not feel the loss of guys like that.
Well,
I just don't believe you guys have filled the speed role that your offense could potentially require in command with the loss of Tyreek Hill. I don't think that there's enough wide receiver depth, certainly that's healthy, to show out and show that Mahomes has enough wide receiver depth to fill the deep threat that would help and bolster your offense. Certainly that would give options. I think that's an issue. I do think that you've done a good job with your offensive line on your team, and I think that if you can get some additional depth there, which I think you've already done, you're probably okay on that front, so that's good. But I just think that there's a few key positions in key spots, and the linebackers are good but not great. Trust me, I realize that's the pot rather, calling the kettle black, because, I mean, let's be honest, the inside linebackers for the Denver Broncos.
Well, you just got done going for about 15 minutes talking about how the Broncos' depth was bad.
That's exactly my point, right? Which is, I think there's a few key positions on your team that you're lacking that will cause a drop off in certain spots, in certain things over the course of the season that you'll start to notice. And I'm looking at that from the Broncos experience that I've had thus far, which is, if you don't plan it right, it can go downhill quickly, and you need to be very careful. At least you have your stable quarterback, so that's a good thing. But I think that when you start looking at other areas of your team, you just haven't backfilled it the right way, and I'm concerned that can cause a problem.
Well, those are obviously concerns you've made known before, and it's, you can't replace Tyreek Hill, you can't replace Tyrann Mathieu. Those are two one-of-a-kind players in their own right. And I've said that before, but I think the biggest loss with Mathieu, at least from that perspective, is not the traits he brought to playing defense. It was the mental approach he took to responding to the offensive scheme and getting people in the right situations and sort of running the show from the back half of the defense. But he was slowly becoming more and more of a liability in coverage and playing the run. You saw Brady in the Super Bowl single-handedly attacked Tyrann Mathieu several times, and that just sort of further went into the next season. And, like I said, you can't replace the Honey Badger, but I think they signed Justin Reed, who's a similar player, and certainly has all the traits to do what Mathieu did in the KC defense. And they also, you talked about not having the depth to make up for that loss, but then you got Juan Thornhill, who's going to have a good starting role, and he's a guy they've drafted and sort of eased into the scheme and not really thrown into the forefront. And I think he's going to have a good year. So there's a lot of youth that they've either had already on the roster or used all their draft capital to sort of replenish. And I think you kind of see the KC's trying sort of a new model with how do you replenish and keep your lineup competitive while, having to lock in a Mahomes and, other younger guys for big money. And I think if if they come out of the gates successful, I think you're going to see teams start to do what KC has done and sort of decide which players you want to keep in the core and get rid of the ones that are coming up for big payouts for draft capital, and just sort of regroup every 3-4 years and hope you hit on 2 or 3 of them. But and to your point of losing the speed and stuff, that they did with passing the ball, obviously no one can beat Tyreek Hill, but they have plenty of 4-4, 4-3 guys on their, on the roster now, and guys they went and got, to not only recoup the lost speed approach of Tyreek, but also, as I've been preaching, be able to change the offensive mindset as a whole and not just run through Kelsey and Hill and let teams scheme for that. You have way more options that you've already seen Mahomes utilizing, in the preseason here, and you've seen him spread the ball out more. And I think that you're going to see a different approach taken from KC with throwing the ball. But at the same time, I don't think they've lost speed. I mean, Valdez-Scantling was the second fastest recorded player last year behind Tyreek Hill. He's, the same burner, so to speak. And a lot of people say that a lot of that speed and stuff opens up when Mahomes scrambles around and improvises. And you've also seen that gelling really well in the preseason, that they've at least worked to some degree the scramble drill of when Mahomes has to buy time. I mean, he's already had 3-4 highlight plays, sidearm runs with guys that are new to the team, and they know what he's doing and respond to it. So I think that the Chiefs have done everything they could do on paper to lose who they lost and be in the same competitive position they've been in. And I am very optimistic, confident that they are going to be as successful as they have been in the previous season.
Fair enough. Coach, I want to get over to you to get the 53 for the Chargers.
Okay. I'm just going to highlight things that I thought will change from my original projection from the 53 to now. Obviously, Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, all those guys are supplanted in their roles. J.C. Jackson, Sante Samuel, Michael Davis, things of that nature. So I think I'll focus on the last wide receiver spot. I had Joe Reed slated for the wide receiver 6, but I think it's going to be supplanted by Michael Bandy. He'll be the 6 wide receivers instead of Joe Reed. Michael Bandy has the ability to return kicks and be a slot receiver, a very effective slot receiver. So I think he will, his play in the preseason will allow him to make the 53 versus Joe Reed, and they'll cut ties with Joe Reed. He's actually an old regime guy. So I think the Chargers' new regime will be comfortable with letting Joe Reed go. I will also say that Storm Norton and Jerry Tillery both get cut. I think that once Trey Pipkin is likely going to be the starter at left tackle, it's going to be right tackle. So I think that he will be the day one starter, and Storm Norton will likely be the guy who'll be the, I guess you can say, the odd man out in a sense.
I've already seen news reports from the Chargers coach that Pipkin has won the right tackle job.
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah, I mean, I think they all but said it. I mean, we'll know when cut down day comes who really is there. But I think because Storm Norton is a holdover, from last year, and he had some struggles in camp last year and this year. So I think that they'll be comfortable with freeing up a roster spot and letting him go. I think Will Clapp stays as a reserve O-lineman. Clearly, Rashad Slater, my father, Corey Lindsey, Zion Johnson all stay. Jamari Sallier stays. I think it's just between Zach Bailey and Brendan Hymas who make the other 2 O-lineman spots. Donald Parham, Trey McKinney, tight ends. DeAndre Carter obviously is your wide receiver 4. I went back and forth about the secondary when it comes down to the defense, because Dean Leonard's having a rough camp, to say the least, and from multiple aspects. So I would like to believe if they had a better option, they might move off of him or maybe put him on a practice squad just to help him develop a little bit. But he was a 6th-round pick, so I mean he is a contract that's very light on the books in a sense. So I think that they will probably keep him around it to be that 4th, 5th, or 6th corner, him and Josiah Taylor. So I think those 2 will be the guys, the holdovers from special teams, and it kind of gives me pause because when I saw Taylor and Leonard on special teams in the preseason, they look too good. But hopefully they can improve that ability, because that's likely where they'll be at, playing a lot of special teams. So interior D-line, I think clearly Joseph Day Johnson make it. Christian Covington, Otito Ojibanoe makes it. Morgan Fox makes it. Chris Rump, Calvin Noy from the edge perspective. All reserve roles, Joey Bolson, Khalil Mack, obviously the starting edges. Inside linebacker, Kenneth Murray, Drew Tranquil, Troy Reader, and Nick Neiman. Calvin Noy will be the hybrid inside linebacker and edge guy, kind of a switch army knife type of guy. that makes it. In safeties, I got JT Woods and Mark Webb making the reserve role for free safety and strong safety, and maybe Alohi Gilman if they feel like they want to have 5 safeties. But outside of that, I mean, that's pretty much where it lands. Clearly, Justin Hopkins, Josh Harris, and J.K. Scott are your reserve special teamers, kicker, long snapper, and punter. And one more thing. I think Xander Horvath makes fullback and Gabe Neighbors is cut, although that's Justin Herbert's roommate. It's kind of a rough move, but we'll see how it happens. It's a shocker, but I think Xander makes it over Gabe.
I think the important thing for all these coaches is that they don't feel that they're tied by player relationships and that they actually focus on who the best players are. And I think that it's important that if you have a guy that's actually playing better, unless he's a staple, like a glue guy on certain teams, you know, whatever, that the right guy ends up starting. So I think those are some interesting, nothing shocking or surprising, really, I think, from what we've seen so far. Maybe 5 safeties would be a bit of a surprise, although safeties are great for special teams. So it's not really a shocker that you potentially see 5 safeties being kept by any team. It's just a matter of whether or not you think a gunner or, whatever kind of variation thereof better fits on special teams. Because a lot of times they'll use wide receivers and those kind of things. If they're a good tackling or blocker, they'll use them on special teams as opposed to that extra safety. Sometimes safeties are used instead. So you're kind of 6 half dozen the other, depending on which option you look at.
Right. And I think Staley is really big on his DBs. So I think he will likely keep more DBs than not. So I think that he'll keep the young guys around to develop them. And I think he'll keep maybe 4 to 5 safeties in order to fill out his special teams, especially if Leonard has the same woes he's had on special teams in the regular season. So if he's continued to miss tackles, then I think he'll put a safety in that spot versus having Leonard be the guy that will be covering the special teams.
Awesome. So, guys, if you have any questions for Coach with regards to the roster, go ahead and leave those questions down below in the comments. Reach out to him on Twitter, and we're happy to continue the conversation even after the show. I'm going to quickly go through the Denver Broncos side. I have a similar breakdown to what Captain had for the Raiders. I have 25, 25, and 3 in terms of my roster here.
Yeah,
so I have 2 quarterbacks being kept. I have Wilson and Rippon being kept as the quarterbacks and Johnson being cut. I believe Rippon has looked better in preseason than Johnson. I believe that. What?
I said Johnson's a journeyman. You got to respect him.
I have absolutely respect for him, but the problem is that I just think that we saw Rippon look better against superior competition against the Bills, and I think if you're going to be honest with yourself as a Broncos fan, that should count for something. And in my opinion, it does. And then I think you're going to see Rippon again show out better against the Vikings, who are, again, a better team overall than anyway. So I think he's just a better quarterback. And I also believe that Broncos are looking at Rippon as a potential future coach, because I believe Rippon has the potential to be a coach. I believe he literally has a potential to be a coach. He is that good. And
he's from Boise State.
Pardon me?
Is he from Boise State?
I can't remember the college he came from, but what I can tell you is that he has a family acumen with his uncle being from the NFL, from the the now Washington Commanders, and all accounts from everywhere in Broncos country is that he is just wicked smart. And those are the types of guys that are often make good coaches. Kubiak would be a great example of that.
Well, I only asked if he's from Boise.
Wicked smart. Could have potentially been a good quarterback, but didn't really have the physical tools to do it. Yeah, and then as a result, makes a great coach because he can coach up guys that have the better physical gifts and stuff, right? So, I think Rippon is going to be our QB2, and I think he can be a potential long-term backup for us as well, which I don't think is a bad thing either. Looking ahead for our running backs, Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, and Mike Boone. I don't think that should surprise anyone. I do not believe we will keep 4 running backs because I have not seen anything from the other from 4 through 5 that we have on the roster right now, unless the new guy that we just signed really shows out. I just don't see him or anyone else making the roster. I see us keeping 3. Wide receivers is where I think it gets interesting because I believe that we're going to use wide receivers more on special teams, both gunners and just kind of just gap assignments and whatnot, staying in their lanes. I just think that they have that kind of acumen. I also think that the Broncos covet run blocking wide receivers, which also bode well to transitioning over to special teams. So I actually have us keeping 7, which is rare, but I see it potentially happening. So I have Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Montreal Washington, who has been an absolute outstanding pickup from the draft, Jalen Virgil, and Brandon Johnson. I have both of those guys making the team. Where I actually have a either or is with either Kendall Hinton or Seth Williams. So if the Broncos want to go for size, I think we keep Williams. If the Broncos want to go for kind of a cover all and can do everything, I think we go with Kendall Hinton. And I believe that that's what the Broncos are going to do. Well, and of course you always need a 4th string quarterback in Hinton. So, he's the guy that fills that role too. So, I mean, Hinton probably has the inside edge, but in my opinion, I think that Williams may well make the team just because of size and speed as a combination. With regards to tight ends, I have us keeping technically 5, although one of them is a fullback in Andrew Beck for us. I have us keeping Albert O, Eric Saubert, Greg Dulcich, Eric Tomlinson as a primarily blocking tight end, and Andrew Beck as the fullback. This is one of the challenges I have with the Broncos preseason is we didn't see anyone else in there at the fullback position as a fullback / tight end. And, you guys were all talking about how you guys saw a mix-up on your offensive line. Captain, you brought that up as well. I didn't see any mixing up at the fullback position from our tight ends to see if someone else could play that role instead of Beck. And because we didn't see that, I'm just not comfortable that the fact that we're going to see that for the Broncos. We did see Saubert play that role a little bit last year for us, but I'm just not convinced that that the Broncos have seen enough from anybody else other than Beck to keep anyone else in that tight end / fullback role to move on. For the offensive line, I have Garrett Bowles, Billy Turner, Dalton Reisner, Quinn Miners, Netane Muti, Lloyd Cushenberry. I have us keeping Wattenberg, who's been center throughout the preseason, who plays both guard and center. And then where it gets interesting for me at offensive line, this is where the coin flip happens, is I could see us either keeping Anderson on our roster or keeping Glasgow on our roster, but it's an either or scenario to keep us under the 53-man limit. Anderson is both a left and right tackle, whereas Glasgow can play all 3 interior positions across our offensive line. It simply just depends on where we think we need it more. If I were to look at the current guys that I have on the team, Anderson would be the guy that makes it, just because that would give us a third potential at both tackle, swing tackle, and even like a big guy maybe coming in for, jumbo packages or whatever the case may be. So that covers off 25 on the offensive side. For the defense, my D line, I have a whole bunch of asterisks here because I could totally see us cutting guys and bringing in cuts from other teams. Because I've just not been truly impressed with some of the depth of the D line. I don't think they've gotten the pressure. I have Draymond Jones, Wazirike, DJ Jones, Purcell all making it as basically locks for 4 of our D linemen. And then I have Jonathan Harris, Deshaun Williams, and Matt Hennison, who was a guy that really showed out in the first preseason game for us, all making the 53-man roster. I could see either of those 3 guys not making it and us bringing in a guy from another roster cut to fill in those gaps, and those are the last 3. For inside linebacker, I have us cutting everyone except for 3 and then bringing in someone who is to be determined depending on who gets cut. So I have Josie Jewell, Jonas Griffith, Alex Singleton, and then at first we might keep Justin Stranad, but I could totally see us cutting him and bringing someone else in from a roster cut spot because I think that we'd be better suited with somebody else. But those are my I have us keeping 4 inside linebackers. For outside linebackers, I have Bradley Chubb, Randy Gregory, Nick Bonito, who is our second-round draft pick, Jonathan Cooper, and Baron Browning, who could, in theory, also fill that fourth inside linebacker spot if we really needed him to, even though he has, in fact, transitioned to outside backer for us. I actually have a trade of Malik Reed, but I guess depending on where the roster stands, we could keep him. But I know our GM is really looking to try and gain some extra draft capital, and this would be the time where an outside linebacker needy team could well trade for someone like Malik Reed. And so I actually having us trading him near the roster deadline for some draft capital in the upcoming draft. Patrick Surtain, I have, so gone to cornerbacks, Patrick Surtain, Ronald Darby, Quan Williams, Michael Ojemudia, who I do question if we keep. I could see us going after somebody else from, again, a roster cut. And Damari Mathis, who we drafted, I could see as another guy that we bring in or keep, rather, from our draft haul this year. Safeties, I have us keeping 4. Again, not 5. Coach, I know that your team and your coach there is high on DBs. Our current head coach and even offensive coordinator are all offensive minded. So I see them more leaning towards the offensive side of the ball as opposed to trying to bolstering and building out the defensive side. So I see Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson, Caden Stearns, and PJ Locke. If for whatever reason we do want to try to really go after additional draft capital, I could see Yell land on the roster and us maybe trying to trade Kareem Jackson. I could see Kareem Jackson being a really interesting trade piece because some teams may value his veteran leadership, and he's only on a 1-year deal. So it would be kind of a win-win for the Broncos, getting something for a guy that we're not going to keep long-term. And again, going for draft capital for the upcoming draft, which is, again, a George Payton style move. Our special teams, the only change that I have is I believe Corliss Waitman makes the team. And I believe that Sam Martin will get cut, which would be a bit of a surprise for most people. But that's what my projections are. So 25, 25, and 3 is kind of the breakdown that I have for our roster.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how many teams don't have it evenly split like that. That have 27 on the offense and 23, 24 on the defense. I'd be curious to see how teams lay that out, but I imagine they're all kind of.
I've seen some teams go 26 and 24.
Yeah,
I don't normally see the 27-23 thing. I typically see a very slight lopsidedness because you need depth, and the problem is
you have to.
Yeah, the problem is that you need that offensive lineman depth and you need that defensive lineman depth because you're almost guaranteed to have at minimum 1 to 2 of those guys drop during the year.
Yep.
Yeah, and if it's not for one game, one game here and there, and
right.
I mean, you got to beef up the heavies.
No, 100%, and so I think that's why you typically see what you see for most teams, right? So
yeah,
that's what I have for the 53 man, at least my 53 man. I'm curious to see how wrong I am. I could totally see our coaches maybe kind of throwing a wrench in the deal and only keeping 5 wide receivers, which would really throw, that whole thing, way off on me and everything. But, we'll see what happens. And any comments that anyone has down below, please. And you can also reach out to us on Twitter with your other comments in terms of what you think we're wrong, you think we're right. Even guys that you thought we maybe should have made honorable mentions for. And no, we did not go into the practice squad guys because that just gets too long and you starting into too much volleying back and forth. And frankly, that's a very churning style on most teams. Most guys go up and down on your practice squad. But that's going to do it for the show today, guys. We really do appreciate you joining the Wild Wild West podcast tonight. It has been an honor to have you guys join us live. And we're going to go live next Wednesday at 7:30. We're going to have a lot of the, projections. We'll start hearing some rumors of guys that are getting cut and all that kind of stuff. And we'll probably have some injury updates, sadly, in terms of, just that's the nature of football. But until next Wednesday, guys, thank you for joining us at the Wild West podcast. And I'll let's not forget the West Side is the best side, and we'll see you next week.